you go until you can't go anymore. And that's where the truth is, because things can be true and not be the truth.
And this is Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, David Rives, and every day, every interview, every episode at a time, we are changing the narrative. Yeah, not that narrative that tells you that you are star stuff, some accident, the result of a cosmic debris that somehow became you. No, but the truth that you have purpose in life, that you really are loved. I am here with my guest, Andy Andrews. He is in studio with me today. Welcome to the program, Andy.
Man, I am excited to be here, and I can tell already we've got to up our game. I mean, because you guys do like a real television language. You know, it's like and in 10, and it's like okay, and speed. I'm like, wow, we just like, okay, you ready to talk? Go. This is great.
Is that red button pushed in on them cameras right there?
That thing pushed in?
That works. No.
I'm honored to be here, though.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you. We love what you do. Now, you're based out of Florida?
Alabama.
Alabama, that's right.
Actually, my front yard, my mailbox is in Alabama, okay, and my backyard's in Florida. But, so you could say either.
Right on the edge. Now, tell me just a little bit about how you got your start. I know that's a long story, but you have written a number of books on the topic. Just give me a quick rundown.
Yeah, I lived in a pretty normal household until I was 19. My dad was a minister, and when I was 19, my parents died. My mom died of cancer. My dad was killed in a car accident same year. So crazy time. But I've always had the ability to take a bad situation and make it worse. And I did. I made some bad moves and ended up literally homeless before that was even a word. Wow. You know, 35 years ago, nobody was talking about homeless people. Yeah. That wasn't a term anybody used, but I was sleeping under a pier on the Gulf Coast and in and out of people's garages, which is not safe or smart, but I did. And met an old guy there under my pier one night, scared me to death. But he was a guy we had seen. We knew that he was in and out of town, but we never knew where he stayed when he was in town, never knew where he went when he left, and didn't know how old he was. You know, we'd look at him and say, is he 80 or 180? We weren't really sure. But he called himself a noticer. He said when God was passing out talents, I didn't get the cool ones. I can't run fast, I can't sing great, but I noticed little things that people miss. And so he was a huge influence in my life, and I eventually wrote a book called The Noticer about him.
Interesting. Okay, so your journey has taken you all over, but it's also that trajectory has put you in front of so many people. We're talking about top executives, firms. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it has been a long climb to the middle for me. And people will sometimes my friends will say, well, you have been incredibly successful. And when I hear that, I think, I don't know that I have been incredibly successful, but for whatever reason, God has seen fit to put me in the presence of success. And so I have been at amazing moments, just kind of Forrest Gump moments, with people. I've been in the backyard by Bob Hope's swimming pool with just me and Mr. Hope, and I toured for 2 years with Joan Rivers. I was with her when she got fired from Carson, and walked Nancy Lopez on her last tour, walked down the fairway with Nancy, and I was with General Schwarzkopf and several presidents, and just so for whatever reason, I have been there and been able to offer words of encouragement or guidance, and it's been pretty amazing. It still continues to be. And here I am today with you. So
I tell you, here we are in the Wonder Center, which is, by the time people see this, we might actually have our doors open. And
this is amazing. I hope you do have your doors open when people see this, because I am blown away.
Oh, thank you. It's truly been a journey over the past year, but we've seen some remarkable things happen, and I cannot wait to kind of let people in on this experience, because again, we call this changing the narrative, because we've been spoon-fed our narrative all of our lives. You'll get a narrative when you watch the media. You're going to get a narrative when you pick up a newspaper. You're going to get a narrative when you turn on television. You're going to get a narrative when a child picks up a kindergarten book, right?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, because that narrative oftentimes is from this really twisted, horrible point of view that gives no purpose to life. And yet, we've had a lot of opportunities that have just fallen into our laps over the years. I don't know if it's the same with you.
It is. And I spend a lot of time explaining to people that there is a difference in history and the past.
Okay.
Because the past is what really happened. History is just what somebody wrote down. And a lot of times I'll write, because I put real stories in a lot of my books, and The Traveler's Gift and The Noticer and Heartmender. This real stuff, and so I explain sometimes to my editors who question certain things. I have to say, look, you have to understand how history is made. There's a difference in the past and history. The past is what the truth is, okay? But and I use the example. I'll say, consider a battle that happened 1,000 years ago. And so 1,000 years ago, everybody went home from the battle and they told their families about it. And then those kids told their kids, and those kids told their kids. And this goes on for 500 years until somebody decided they would write a book about that battle. And so when they wrote the book about the battle and somebody else read it, they said, that's not what my granddaddy said. And so then they wrote a book, and then by the time the internet happens, there's 50 books about the battle, and then there's people that are writing books about the books, and so when you're going through history like that, you have to be very discerning. You have to things have to make sense, and so I think that when we're talking about changing the narrative on biological events, same thing. It has to make sense.
Yeah, it has to make sense.
God is not a God of confusion, and so confusion does not come from God. And so if we're confused,
that's on us.
Right.
That's not because God happened to have a problem. That's not because he made a mistake, right? But then I think that a lot of it comes into our identity. There's a lot of people on planet Earth today, and it's so easy to see ourselves as, we're kind of commonplace here. How do we set ourselves apart? Now, how do you set yourself apart? That is what makes your journey your life. Some people, though, say, well, the way to do that is to really, really go outside and to try to create this new identity for ourselves.
And it's the opposite of what God intended. Because when you hear people say, well, the God I worship would never do this, and the God I believe in, he believes this. The Bible says we were created in God's image. Well, that's the opposite. That's creating God in your image. You're turning that totally backwards, and you're not discerning what God intends you to believe. You're believing something and projecting that belief on God, and so now you're making God in your image.
You're right. When I look back and I think to myself, a very wise man, a mutual friend of ours both, Philip Morris, he once told me something I'll never forget. He's like, it's better to be a year, 10 years, whatever it is, late than 1 minute too early.
Yeah.
Because we have this trajectory in front of us. We have this path that the Lord has set, right? And if we try to step in and jump 1 second too early, well, we may jump just before he puts the bridge there, right? So we're jumping off of a cliff.
Right.
But then, as long as you're in the moment, as long as you know that this is what you're supposed to be doing, then those doors will open. And that's where patience can be hard, but it's so rewarding, whether that's in business or in just life in general, whatever it is.
Well, I think it's important to look at what God has done in our lives and to remember that. A lot of times our humanity comes into like kind of, what have you done for me lately? And that's the wrong attitude, because we should, I think that if you can remember any time that you feel like that could have only been God, then that's a memory to carry. You know, I always think about the disciples and being around Jesus and the things that he did that they must have been rolling their eyes at,
right?
You know, until because there's that first time when Jesus said, "Throw your nets on the other side of the boat," and then when Jesus was at the wedding feast, he's going to turn the water into wine, and he says, "Get the jugs," and the disciples were, what are you doing? Well, Mary's wanting wine, he's getting water. What? And then somebody said, well, remember the fish, remember the thing on the other side. Oh yeah. And I can imagine Jesus going, Lazarus, come forth, and the disciples going, oh no, don't do this, you're going to embarrass us all. Right. And then somebody said, well, remember the wine, remember the water, the wine. It's, oh yeah, let's watch. And so I think that we have to keep our minds on the things that God does do. The
evidential things. Now, it's interesting you mentioned that, because we're talking about things that they saw him do, right? They were witness to. And they still couldn't believe that this thing was about to happen.
Wrapping their mind around it, yeah.
Yeah. And we're the same way. In so many ways, we're the same way. We look at things and we say, well, maybe this world is an accident. Maybe we're just all alone in this thing and we have no purpose, And then you say, no, but we really do have this amazing God who created everything. And he loved us so much that, he gave us Jesus, right? That he became flesh. And you're like, yeah, well, that's a miracle, That's like, I don't know, that's kind of out there. But it's okay to ask questions. I have faith as a Christian, okay? I 100% have faith. But at the same time, it's okay to ask questions, because the Lord will provide the answers to those questions. Remember Thomas? Right. He's doubting, right? He said, I'm not going to believe that he's raised from the dead unless I can see him, unless I can actually touch the wounds in his hands. There's no way. I mean, I saw him die. I just saw that. That's evidence, and I saw it happen.
Yeah. And the quality of our answers will be determined by the quality of our questions.
Yes.
You ask good questions, you get good answers.
But did Jesus discourage that? No. When he showed up in the room, he was not like, okay, well, Thomas, because you doubted, you're just get out of the room. I don't want to see you ever again. He said, because, Thomas, you ask a question. It is a legitimate question. You got a little bit of doubt here. So let me give you the evidence. Come here. Let me show you. He gave him physical, evidential proof. And of course, that changes people's lives.
And I got to say this. This is what the Wonder Center is being prepared to do. I'm just telling you, man. I mean, there were several times today that as we were walking through and you explained a certain thing or we read a certain thing there, we looked at each other and go, well, there's your answer about this. If you're wondering about this, and you have so many things in here that we have seen before.
Yes.
But we have not interpreted in that way. And so, that is a new perspective. And a lot of times people will ask me about perspective. And perspective, if I said to somebody, well, what is perspective? Most people would say, well, it's the way you see something. Yeah. It's the way you see it. But, it's like, do you see the glass half full or do you see the glass half empty?
Right.
But in reality, the glass is not half full. It's not half empty. That water line is what it is. And so perspective is actually how you choose to see it.
Okay.
It's and whatever way you choose to see it will lead your life into one direction or another. I talk a lot about going to the bottom of the pool, because the bottom of the pool, that's as deep as you can go. And a great definition of wisdom is a deeper understanding of principle. So I'm always curious about that definition, a deeper understanding of principle. And you'll notice the definition is not a deep understanding of principle, because a deep understanding of principle, that's a target you can hit. You go, okay, I have a deep understanding of principle, so I must have wisdom. But a deeper understanding of principle, when you have a deeper understanding of principle, where do you go from there? Well, deeper.
Deeper.
Okay. And so you go until you can't go anymore. And that's where the truth is, because things can be true and not be the truth. The truth connotes as far as you can go. That's the bottom of the pool. Yeah. But there are many things that can be true and not be the truth. I'll give you an example. If we took a blind person and said, hey, we're going to take you to this barn. We're going to allow you some time with this animal. We know you've never heard of this animal, but it's called an elephant. We're going to give you a few minutes with it and want you to come out and tell us what an elephant is like and how it could be used in society. And so after 10 minutes or so, the blind person may come out and say, well, an elephant is very, very tall, very, very wide, huge, kind of flat, and dense. You could use one for a gate, maybe put several of them together and make a wall. And we would go, very good. That's very good. That's true. It's all true. It's not the truth.
Right.
Because until we had the truth about an elephant, we'd never have a complete picture of what one actually looked like. And we would never have any idea of the many ways they could be used to help humans. And so the danger that people have is they stop at what is true.
Without going deeper.
Yeah, my 23-year-old asked me recently, he said, Dad, what's the best advice you've ever gotten? And I told him, I said, well, it came from the old man, from Jones, the noticer. And he said something to me one day that was very odd. It went over my head, but I have unpacked it for 35 years, and now I use it with my clients. I use it with my family. I use it with about every decision. I use it every day of my life. And what he said was, you got to remember, you can't believe everything you think. And so it sounded odd to me, and I spent years unpacking that. And here's the way I can explain that best: is have you ever known something? I mean, you knew it, and you could argue it, and you could win the argument every time, and then you found out a year later or 6 months later, well, that wasn't exactly right, or gosh, my information is a little incomplete there. Okay, well, if you've ever done that in your life, does the possibility exist that something you know now, your information might be incomplete? And you would go, well, Andy, of course, something I know now, my information might be incomplete. Okay, I agree. But the point is, we don't know what that is, do we? Or how many subjects that covers in your life. And so when you look at the potential that each of us has as human beings, the Bible says God knew us before we were born.
That's
He
right.
knit us together inside our moms, and so we were created with a godly potential, not just the best you can imagine, but God's best. And so if you think about that for a second, you think about if you imagine the best for your life, do you want the best for your life? Yes, you do. Do you think God wants his best for your life? Yes, he does. Okay, well, when you imagine the best for your life and God imagines the best for your life, who do you think has a better imagination, you or God? Okay, so how big's the gap there? And so when you're looking at the potential that we have as human beings, and everybody wants to reach their potential, but most people believe that the biggest danger to reaching our God-given potential is something we don't know. It's something that we're missing.
Oh, yes.
And yet, that's not it at all. Because when we don't know something, we keep searching. We keep asking. We keep listening.
That's true.
We keep reading. And so the biggest danger to reaching our God-given potential is not what we don't know. The biggest danger to reaching our potential is what we know for sure.
Okay.
Because when we know something for sure, we quit thinking.
Right. The open mind stops.
Right. We arrive at what is true. And I see business people a lot of times, the people who have the biggest danger to stop at what is true are the people who are great successes.
Yeah.
And, people who are in first or second place in their industry because they're looking around and, nobody's doing better than me.
We've reached it.
Yeah, so we've reached it. And so it's why, I've got a company called Creating Measurable Results.
Yes.
At creatingmeasurableresults.com. And we take companies and help them double and triple in a year. And when you look at a company that has done well, I had one company that I said to the CEO, I said, you have awesome people, and I don't think there's any reason that you shouldn't be able to double your results in a year. And he said, yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? That'd be great. And I said, well, I really think you can double your results in a year. And he said, well, we did 5.4 billion last year.
That's a lot.
I said, yeah, I know, and I think you should be able to double that in a year. And he said, well, it took us 19 years to get to 5.4.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I know, and you should be able to double that in a year. And so we talked, and I explained to him what I was talking about and how it would be done. And because I realized here's a guy, they're happy with where they are.
Right.
And they're doing better than anybody else. And so, but in a year, they did 11.2, which I didn't mean to call it that close. Okay.
Yeah.
But then the next year, 17.6, and next year, 22. And after 7 years, they're at 72. They closed last year at 72.5 billion. And so a lot of that is erasing the thinking that we have.
Yes.
Because we're the ones that are putting God's
limit.
imagining his best, and we're going, no, that could never happen.
Yeah.
And the people who are the most susceptible to this are the people who, I talked to a football coach who, I mean, by all standards, he's like the best, right? And I said to him, I look at you, and you're in a conversation for the best of all time. Mm-hmm. And so what seminar would you go to? Mm-hmm. What consultant could you possibly bring in here that would tell you more than you already know? And I said, it's not a matter of learning more. It's a matter of thinking differently.
Okay.
Because nobody knows how to do what you do more than you know.
Right.
Now, they're close because they're watching you. Right? And so it's not a matter of how, because people can take principles and once a principle is explained, almost everybody can figure out how to harness that principle, how to use that principle. But when you get to the point that you can explain why that principle works as it does, you can use that principle in areas nobody else is seeing that it even fits.
Yes.
Okay, and so there is a degree of wisdom that if and God's saying seek wisdom like you're looking for lost rubies.
Right.
And most of us seek wisdom with less passion than we look for our car keys.
It's so true. Everybody talks about, this person is very knowledgeable, and that always gets me. And I'm like, yes, this person is extremely smart, very knowledgeable, but they have not figured out how to use the understanding and the wisdom to apply that knowledge to its utmost potential. And very few of us could ever even attain that. So that's the reason we have to continually seek the wisdom.
There's a big difference in knowledge and wisdom. Most of us, every 12-year-old we know they have the mental and physical ability to learn how to drive a car.
Yeah.
We could teach almost any 12-year-old to drive a car. Yeah. But even if we did teach them to drive a car, we wouldn't throw them the keys and say, have a great weekend.
Right. Because
they don't have the wisdom to apply that knowledge in a proper perspective and proper context.
Yeah. That is so important. So important. And I think that you've given us some things today that we can all take, that we can run with, and hopefully we can think about in a different way, that we don't just stop, that we can go deeper.
You go deeper. Yeah, you go deeper.
Andy, you've all of your books are available pretty much anywhere books are sold.
Yeah, AndyAndrews.com. If you get them at AndyAndrews.com, I'll sign them for you.
There you go.
They'll be signed. So.
That sounds good to me. And also Creating Measurable Results.
CreatingMeasurableResults.com. And that's the business
side of things,
coaching. And then we have wisdomharbor.com, which is our goal is to create the next greatest generation starting in your hometown.
Ooh, I love it. That sounds like something that we're going to have you back to talk about.
All right.
Thank you, Andy Andrews.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And thank you for visiting us today. I'm David Rives. We'll see you next time on Changing the Narrative. Until that time, remember to keep looking up, because truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Find us on all social platforms to stay informed. Watch Genesis Science Network 24/7 for free on Roku, Fire TV, and on our website.